World According To. Delighted to welcome a new guest, Connor Tomlinson, political commentator with Young Voices UK. How are you, sir?
Very good. Thank you for inviting me on the show, Jeremy.
Not at all. Thank you so much indeed. Today we've been talking about HS2, Boris Johnson, the Tory government, via Transport Secretary Grant Shapps, announcing earlier that parts of the HS2 long vaulted rail system in the north is to not happen. But as everybody jumped on board and said, it's Boris letting us down, the Tory government's still announcing £96 billion to be part of a transport levelling up structure in the north, more interconnectivity between certain big towns. And it leads to one question. Well, two, actually. Has Boris Johnson betrayed the north, first and foremost, Connor? And secondly, are you with me that 96 billion could have been spent on something far more up north, which is hospitals, doctors, nurses and schools? Because I would have thought that, having lived in the north, was a much better way of levelling it up.
Well, I think he's betrayed the North in many respects in terms of his policies that have kneecapped social mobility. I mean, graduates, especially, we've got some great universities up in the north. People travel from all over the country to try and come back to their towns and do much better jobs, high-paying jobs, especially now we've got loads of remote working, etc. Graduates like me, you're going to be paying about 42% tax due to the national insurance rises. Now he's looking to move the rate at which you pay student loans back. So you're crippling all that. They've also massively scaled up the housing market, and it's now starting to knock onto the north, not just London being terrible as well. And with HS2, I mean, they've escalated the cost by about 20 billion, but the leg that they're looking to cut, the Leeds leg, is one of the most significant time reduction ones. So that seems pretty illogical to me, that you'd completely isolate Sheffield from HS2.
But when you say that, people are phoning this show from the north saying, Jez, what's the issue with getting to London 10 or 12 minutes quicker? I would. Yeah, the 10-minute one makes no sense, and that's why I'm kind of annoyed by HS2, because it's more of a money pit than half of the houses I've moved into over my lifetime. We're firing, money like confetti out of a cannon for something that cuts the journey time by about 2 minutes on one of the links. But surely that money can be spent better in interconnectivity in terms of railway lines. But I repeat, and I don't mean you to take this the wrong way, right? Have you lived up north or been up north?
I've been up north. I haven't lived up north.
I lived up there for 15 years. And let me tell you categorically, that £96 billion could be spent far more adequately on real things that make real people in the north feel like they're getting a decent whack. If I'm being honest, I'm being serious.
I agree. I think there's a lot of government, especially across a lot of sectors, a lot of government spending that could be slashed. We've seen that with the completely useless university degrees that people are going on strike for, that the taxpayers are still forced to subsidise the tuition costs. We've seen that with the NHS telling everyone to be less white when all diversity czars and bloating the bureaucracy. So we're spending loads of government money, especially after they just locked us all down and done the furlough scheme, which has bankrupted the country. And now we're putting it on this project instead. I think if you instead did policies that encouraged, business investment in the towns that have been left behind up north after Tories scrapped all the coal mines, etc., years ago, and we haven't had much social mobility up there, that'd be a lot better spent policy-wise and less government debt incurred than something that skips 10 minutes between here and London.
I don't think debt is a big issue with Boris. The other big story,
it will be when we all have to pay it back, though.
Well, somebody said, I keep repeating this because I think it's the greatest line ever written by Kiernan on this show, when he said we voted, not we, but the country voted for a blue government that's turned green and now spends more money than the Reds. Yep. And I mean, that's actually very, very true. The other, again, I read this story today and I thought the world's gone barking mad. Government plans to say to migrants who arrive in their dinghies, within 7 days, we're going to fly you to Albania. We're going to put you in a refugee camp. It's going to cost the British taxpayer £100,000 per refugee. But we really hope, that'll put you off wanting to come to Britain. The greatest conversation today was with the ex-MEP for UKIP, I think, Bill Edridge, who said, I understand, he said, with my hand on my heart, that people will want to escape war-torn countries. Completely understand that. But France isn't a war-torn country. Why does everybody come to a country that has left the European Union and should have control of its borders? But Albania? What's that all about?
There's no shortage of compassion in this country, but there is a shortage of resources. And unfortunately, we've got a lot of a draw in terms of our social safety net, in terms of the RNLI, basically ferrying people across the channel, in terms of a lot of money being spent on free doner kebabs, pizza. There's 20,000 phones were given out last year to the migrants as a guarantee so they contact their families. So there are a lot of incentive structures for people to come over here. It's like the Polish border. They're all chanting Germany because Germany gives a lot of benefits to the migrants, like free dental care.
Why, if we are heavily in debt, right? Why, if there are massive long waiting queues for operations? Why, if there's 3 million people unemployed? Why, if the NHS is on its arse? Sorry, but that's how I feel. What do you say to the people who say we should not let, unfortunately, these people, sorry, yes, hard and difficult, and we all don't like to see these pictures of people whose lives are apparently so appalling that they want to get into a boat and risk their life. That breaks my heart. But the fact of the matter is, and Australia was vilified years ago for this, we're finding it hard to pay for ourselves, aren't we?
You don't get to jump on a rubber duck and then skip the line in front of people that are doing all the paperwork, that are going through a merit-based immigration system, as we've been repeatedly told we're becoming. You don't get to cut in front of people just because you're closer on the Calais border than someone, halfway around the world who's, got a job lined up for them over here and tank the
truth is, though, it's the French, isn't it? It's the French. They're getting us back for Brexit.
Oh, yeah, Macron's definitely trying to postulate and seem a lot stronger in immigration than Marine Le Pen because she's flanking him to her right and doing quite well in the polls. He's saying if you can ship them all off to Britain, then all the migrants are out of sight, out of mind.
Completely agree with you there. The saddest story for me today, and we've covered this repeatedly, a number of NHS staff leaving in the last week. Thousands of care home staff in England left their jobs over the week with mandatory coronavirus vaccination rules enforced. New figures from NHS England we just received show the workforce fell by 3,000. 3,500 over 7 days to the 14th of November. This is the rule that you've got to be double jabbed if you want to work in a care home. What are your thoughts on that?
It's completely ludicrous because two reasons. One, you're going to create all of these transmission vectors in hospitals where elderly people are going to have to go. If there's a shortage of care home staff, they're going to be stuck back in the NHS hospitals. They're going to put the NHS over capacity like it's been apparently forever, and we keep firing money at it. And that's the most likely place they are to catch COVID. And also, and this is if you look at the NHS ONS statistics for people who are double jabbed for coronavirus cases and deaths between weeks 39 and 46, the majority of people that have died from COVID are over 40 to 80, particularly in 80, and they're mostly double jabbed. And that's because the jab protects a lot of people, but for some people, you are either too elderly or you have too many health conditions to be saved from COVID. And so it won't protect everybody if the patient and the care worker is double jabbed, because you can still transmit to COVID, you can still catch COVID, and it's not a foolproof way of saving yourself from death. So to predicate your employment on double jab status makes no sense whatsoever.
Fantastic. Listen, I really appreciate your call. Actually, just very quickly, Azim Rafiq, I think, showed everybody bravery at its height this week, sitting in front of the DCMS committee and talking about institutionalised racism in cricket. Today has admitted and apologised for sending anti-Semitic texts in 2011, which has created somewhat of a furore. Some people are jumping up and down saying, people in glass houses, mate. That doesn't detract at all from the fact that racism is... Somebody had a go at me, which is really interesting, and said, how are you knocking anti-Semitism down? I'm not. David, who's the producer of the show, came on the show. He's Jewish. He said it was disgusting, but the guy has stood up and apologised straight away. We need to not start a victim witch hunt, do we? We need to teach people and move on. Would you agree with that?
Agreed. It should also shatter the narrative that a lot of the parties of pressure pushing, that institutional racism exists only in one direction. There's a hierarchy of oppression, and that people of some skin color can't be racist to other skin color because one group has absolutely no power compared to the other group. All the people are on the same team, literally cricket, cricket's a meritocracy, and you can have racism both ways. You can have prejudicial views both ways. The easiest way to get over that is have personal connections with people with different beliefs and backgrounds, talk to each other, be understanding, and if you say something wrong, apologize in the moment, have the humility, and move on together.
Agree with that. Thank you, my friend. Connor Tomlinson, political commentator with Young Voices UK. 6:15.